Hi, YouTube. This is This Week in Reddit for the weekly question thread for Friday, May 1st, 2020. If you like this sort of thing, hit that like, subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell. If you have a question, leave it in the comment section below, and we'll get it to answer. If you want to come by and do one of these live, we do New Player Night every Friday night. You can come by twitch.tv/clowntown, and we can talk about it. Put a little question in, and we can get your individual question answered live. It'll be great fun. With that, let's get to Reddit and see what we can do. Thanks for being here. This is Factorio weekly question thread for the r/Factorio subreddit for May 1st, 2020. This is a Friday. All right, and here we go. This is where we just read off the questions and then answer them live. Just kind of a quick hit. Go through, and if you have any new player type of questions that are similar to this, and you're in the live audience, you can join in the chat, and we'll elaborate on them, or get in contact with one of my links below. So here we go. Evert asks, in our base we have multiple stops with the same name. Okay, for example, iron plate pickup, iron plate drop. We control which stops trains go to with signals, so trains only stop at a stop if there's enough to fill up a train or a space in a chest to unload. Okay. LTN comes to mind immediately, but it causes two problems. If an iron pickup turns on, too many trains go to that one stop, right? How do you control which train? Similarly, if an iron drop enables, multiple trains head over. Ideally, you want to send just one. If a few iron pickup stops are enabled, multiple trains still go to the closest one instead of spreading out. Yep. If either a pickup or drop-off is off, we use a fuel stop train yard. Keeps the train circling. Yep. And between the fuel stop and the train yard. Yep. Is it possible to skip stations if a train is already fully loaded or empty? How do people distribute their trains if there's many train distributed stops with similar names? Should I have handled this differently? I'm going to answer the second one first. You can do this with mods. I'm just going to answer the second one only because my answer is going to be done. It's going to solve the problem. The approach is problematic, and you've already identified all of the problems with it. So, to use your language, Avert, it is a problematic approach. The way to handle this is, I want to say the most I've seen it handled, and the way I handle it is, I have iron delivery location and train stop 1, and that train only goes between those two, and might stop at the fuel station, but one train per route only, or multiple trains per route, but unique station names and stackers. So there's a video out there that we talked about last time. It is how and why to use a stacker, and how to have multiple trains going to a single stop, and how to have them wait appropriately. You can also look up how do you use a stacker. There's plenty of videos on it. I do not have any of these 4 problems because all my train stops are unique, and I have dedicated trains for dedicated stops. That's it. You will have more trains run around, what it sounds like, but you won't have this issue where as soon as one stop is enabled, multiple trains kick over. What I end up having is the one use case I do for this for multiple names is that I have a fuel stop. So I have a fuel depot video out there. You can go see how I do it. But essentially, I have a fuel supply, one fuel train, and then many stations named fuel demand, right? And then I have that enable-disable trigger on using signals, same as you do. But the way that you get around this is it's only one train, right? This scenario will work if you have one train doing all of the stuff, all of the deliveries. The way that works is you have to have a low transaction rate So something like delivering fuel to your outposts, maybe delivering a couple of fluids, like like a lube train. Lube is usually consumed with such low quantities that would be a good use case too. You will likely not need just a tons and tons of lube, because it's only used mostly used in electric engines, which is for your yellow science through frames or your belts. But it has to be low transaction usage. Then you can do a one to many, like a one source to many destinations. That's an aspect where this similar name will work. Otherwise, make your trains your train stops uniquely named. Use stackers to accommodate multiple trains going back and forth, and then have a train dedicated not to a station but to a route. That should help you out. Upvote. Oh, they changed the location of the upvote. It used to be right here. Now it's here. Oh, there you go. Well done, Reddit. Sugarless Chunk. Is there a way to recycle old stuff that I've accumulated? 20 steel furnaces, old armor, etc., for example. The answer is no. There's mods that do recycling that break it down into break stuff down into its base components, but that is from a mod. But in vanilla, there's very little you can do with many things that have no upgrade value. So, for example, stone furnaces you can kind of upcycle by turning them into boilers, because stone furnaces are a component to boilers. However, steel furnaces, that's it. They're not used in any other component, so that's a deadhead upgrade path. That's it. Nothing to do. What I usually do is, this is what 78mm said. Step 1, put it all in a wooden box. Step 2, shoot the wooden box till it blows up. Gone. If you have no useful life for them. That's a very typical one for modular armor, wooden power poles, I think, because you can't burn them anymore. Otherwise, we would burn them for fuel. I don't think you can burn those anymore. Wooden boxes you can't burn anymore. If I remember correctly, you can't upgrade steel furnaces. You can't upgrade metal iron boxes. You can't upgrade. Lots of stuff has no upgrade path, and there's nothing to do other than destroy it. Dr. U Boy 21 asks, did the game get harder or something recently? I've been playing on and off and on for 2016. I'm not exactly mastered this game. I consider myself a veteran with hundreds of hours. Reason I asked, I revived an old saved and got my ass handed to me by biters and spitter attacks that would not stop. Yes. So every 5 minutes a swarm, 20 to 40 turrets I had placed, thick walls. They got through anyway after big biters come along. Yes. After a while, I got laser turrets, construction bots, turret creep, but I just don't think his strategy is enough to work anymore. Yeah, in terms of the biters, yes, they did get tougher. 2 ways. One, they improved biter pathing in 2 ways. Number 1, how they get to you. They're more accurate, so they're less likely to clump up away, and so they're more likely to go straight to you. Secondly, they no longer collide with each other and come in at a straight line, in a kind of a line when there's one of the FFFs, I think it was in the 320s or so, where they fixed this biter pathing. And what used to happen is they would move in this little block, and then as soon as they would get triggered, they would go, and they would bump into each other, and then slowly kind of get in a line and come at you, which lets your guns deal with them linearly in a single file line. Also, now the change was that the change was that now they don't collide into each other; they just come at you in a clump, which really allows them to destroy your turrets more effectively. It allows them to do what they were designed to do and put a wall of the strongest biters up front, having the spitters to shoot over them, right? And the third thing, so that's in terms of biter pathing. The second way that they were improved is they messed with the pollution such that, the nests don't absorb as much pollution anymore, or the environment doesn't absorb as much pollution anymore, so more gets to the nest, so they evolve quicker through pollution. Like the right amount of pollution gets to the nest. It's more accurate, actually. Also similar, I want to say in the early 300s, 310 or 315 or something like that, is where they made some things. Nests absorb less pollution, so it goes more to evolution. Let me restate that. The nests absorb less pollution, so more of that pollution goes to the evolution and their evolution. It goes to their evolution rate and their anger and threat and all that. So if you hadn't played for a year or so, and you just suddenly fire it up, you will be in for a surprise at what your former defenses were unable to address. It's a culture shock when that change hit, for sure. Good question, Dr. Drew Boy, or Dr. U Boy. Well done. Underscore minus underscore minus underscore minus says the full screen option isn't full screen, but a borderless window full screen instead. How can I prevent Factorio from always being the top window displayed? I don't know. I don't seem to have have an issue. Factorio having my Factorio mouse here and then being able to click off screen. Factorio is one of the more easy games that is less, very few crashes and very few issues clicking on and off, because I stream it and then I have a million other windows that are up that I'd click on in the interim. So I don't have that. I just use borderless full screen, I think. But I don't seem to have that issue. I can minimize Factorio pretty easy. Pretty weird. BBQ Turtle asks, how do you exit build mode? Like, if you click a stack of items, then is there a way to just carry on without opening your inventory again and clicking the hand? Oh, default queue. If you pick something up in your hand and you're building it or placing it or something, to get rid of whatever's in your hand, hit the Q. It's kind of the cancel button. DR Monix, I want to create a bot-based mall. How should I go about getting the material into the logistics system for that? Should I bring belts right up to the mall and drop the materials to needed, just base providers there? Yeah, that's a good way to do it. For base items like iron and steel and copper, I essentially have trains that offload into giant piles of passive providers, and just as much as that as you can. That's the extreme way to do it. Or you can offload them into storage chests and belt them over to your mall. If you can get your train deliveries of all of your base elements close to your mall, then you can. It's better because the shorter a trip that's made for the bot, the shorter a bot trip makes is better. I said that wrong. I said that shitty. You want your bots to make short trips if possible. One way that we usually do it is we have a separate network. We have a network A where everything gets dropped off, and a network B, and then we have isolated chests that feed between the two. That's the way to do it. That way, your bots make two different sets of bots make these trips, and there's just one interface that there's a network that's separated. That's probably for advanced mode that you might want to do that for UPS reasons and for control reasons. But think about having two separate networks and then having an interface in between the two. A requester requesting from network number one an open space for inserters, and then a provider in network number two in your mall space, and it's an inserter, a stacker inserter going crazy, pushing material over multiple inserters. That's the way to do it. That's usually what we do in game for megabases. ___ minus minus _ minus 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 _ minus says, I accidentally put a blueprint book into the shared blueprint section twice and cannot figure out a way to remove blueprints from there. Right click it and right click it and remove it. I don't remember. Oh no, it's a bug. Interesting. This is a new one. It's a known bug. Oh, okay. Until it's fixed, the only way to remove a blueprint book is to delete every blueprint in the book. Uh-huh. I didn't know. That's very interesting. Today I learned. Bad Preacher says, I searched, but I couldn't find it. At some point, an update broke all the train signals. Aha! It caused every train to kamikaze through every intersection. Does he remember what version that was? Yeah, 16. Yeah, I was going to say 16... mid-40s, I was going to say. I didn't remember the exact version. The FFF was Made a Baby Cry. Made a Baby Cry, yep. Yeah. 1640, I remember that. We had a bunch of those came into my stream saying, Clown, have you updated to version 16 blah, blah, blah yet? And I said, no. Of course, I always give it a day or so. And everyone said, good, don't, because rip trains. And I want to say my buddy Colonel Will did it. And just wrecked everything. Oh, was there another one? I'm guessing you're talking about 1756. I don't remember that. I don't remember it in 17. Maybe collision boxes. I thought it was 1640. The bug disabled all train signals. Yeah, that's the one I remember. I don't remember this one. Anyway. Sinric 42. What kind of problem should I expect taking a map from current 17 branch to 18? I didn't see any recipe changes. Maybe I overlooked something. Anything else I need to look out for? What about map generation? Only offshore pumps changed. Everything else is fine. You will your offshore pumps. I don't even think you'll have to. I don't even think you'll have to move your existing ones because they'll still use the same tiles. I think it's a completely separate object ID. So that your base should just run. You should be fine. However, if you pick up an offshore pump, you will not be able to place it back down where it was. But as long as you leave everything your science should keep going. And my commentary for the rest of that, version 18 is great. The UI is getting really good. It's very clean. Very nice. Sound design is really good. When they first started doing sound design, it was about 50-50 of good/great of wrecking stuff. And it's now over to 80% of it is good or great work. Now the rest, the other pieces of it, there's still a couple things to work on. Some things are just way louder than others that don't need to be. Chiron 42 has the recent 1822 patch broken mods for other people. Yes! When loading the game now, it comes up with a message asking me to disable each of my mods one after the other, and they're all very, very basic things. Yeah, there is a deprecated feature that's been deprecated for a long time that they just now removed. But all these modders hung their hat on this one feature. I don't know what it is. There's a link to it, but yeah. If you're vanilla, you're fine, but if you're a modder, you're gonna have a bad time. Okay. Circle of Sorrow says, can somebody please point this noob towards good resource on controlling logistics? I'm pre-robotic logistics and The constipated conveyor belts are driving me crazy. Could you please show me where to learn how to meet demand and supply and how to control oversupply? Interesting. Constipated conveyor belts. Full belts are good. I don't understand what the issue is of oversupply. I think that's good. Because if he's talking about, he's pre-robotic logistics. So filling a belt is kind of is almost a goal that you mostly achieve for. That means that you're outputting everything to its maximum with a little bit over. So if you have a set of let's see an example. Smelting. So what you'll find is on yellow belts. No. It'll be red belts or maybe you do yellow belts. If you feed in a full yellow belt of iron ore into stone smelters, and you have 24 on top, 24 on bottom, and they feed in, they have all of their coal and everything. 24 per side can fill another yellow belt full of iron plate. That's a very common when you go to factoriocheatsheet.com to see these values. What you'll see happen is that the last two, one on each side, about 23 and a half of those will run. All 24 may not always run. That 24th one on each side may run for a little bit of time. But what that means is you've maxed out your belt capacity, which is about right. You have enough assemblies along a belt to do it, and your visual indicators of the two is everything on your assembly line lit up. Is it active? Like, does it have a fire in it? Is it if it's an assembler, is it spinning? And are your belts full? Those are the two visual indicators to go look at to say, where am I bottlenecked, right? And there are other things to say that you may be bottlenecked on inserters, because if your inserters ever stop, that means you're not inserter limited. If your inserter never stops, that means you may be inserter limited. You might need to add another inserter. Iron gears come to mind. That's a big one where you need more input than what's coming output. 1 and 1 usually doesn't work. You may need a little bit more coming in than out. So look for the third thing about controlling logistics, pre-bot, as you said, pre-robotic logistics, is assemblies always active, full belts, and inserters that never stop. That may tell you if you're inserter limited or not, right? Anyway, but if any of those three things happen, those are just indicators. They're neither bad nor good. But just look for full belts are kind of a goal. That's a good goal to have. And he calls it a constipated belt, but think of it as a full belt. Full belt is good. Winsman. Does the researching speed of robots also increase their power usage? Does researching the speed of robots also increase their power usage? Yes, and doesn't work like that. They use power based on the distance they fly. So, theoretically, over time, they're going to fly more distance in a shorter. Say you figure out how much power they use, or you time them for a minute and say they're going to use X power per minute, and then I'm going to speed them up. Now I'm going to speed them up. Now they're going to be able to fly more distance in a minute. So yeah, they're going to consume more power because it's power per distance. So overall, your power usage will go up because they're just moving faster. They consume a finite amount of power per distance traveled. So, but that's probably what he's seeing. Probably what he's seeing here is saying, look, I had sufficient power before I started this, and now I increased their speed, and now I'm hurting on power. What changed? Yeah. It's a good question. Rack-jacked. This is a long answer. Yeah, look here. I think we answered this last time. So I have a train network with 3 trains sharing the same track. I spy trouble. I spy with my little eye. I'm having trouble with the rail signals to keep them from hitting each other. Look at the tutorial showing me put a change signal before entering a junction. Yep. And regular signal after exiting. Yep. I set this up and it gives me a green light when it should, but now my trains are telling me there's no route to anything else in the network. Yeah, it's probably just the same track. Yeah. If he's talking about same track, you won't be able to loop back through. What you need, Rack-jacked, is rail going one way and then rail going the other way. And like this. Have a dedicated rail for that direction and a dedicated rail for that direction. Same track is problematic. I need to see screenshots to see, because you may be having issues trying to fit trains on the same track, or a common no path that I usually run into on mine is I'll forget to do the opposite side signal. So almost any time you have like a junction or you're trying to exit and come back out the same way, you need a opposite signal. You need a signal in and a signal out. If you're trying to loop back in a port, that's probably what's going on. But Rack-jacked, if you watch this, hit me up on Discord or Twitter or something. Send me your base and we can, or post a picture and we can look at it. Not Diogenes. Is there an easy way to look up the stack size of an item in game? Yeah, I think it's in F4. Yeah, the debug info in tooltips. Yeah, I thought that was there. Debug info tooltips shows you a bunch of things like its proper name, its object, its a lot of interesting thing. F4 is where you'll find that. I think then it's in that hover over section, but it's in there somewhere. The other way is when you put it into your logistics. If you research logistics, robot logistics in version 18 anyway, you can, and you start to create an entry in your logistics, then it will default to the stack size. That's a way you can empirically work it out without going to the details in the F4. But if you're not in 18 yet, I don't think that works. So, yep. It may be out there on the wiki also. I don't remember if they have stack size out on the wiki, but check the wiki. It may have a list, an easy lookup outside of Factorio. But those are the two ways I know how to do it inside Factorio. JD? Not this different JD. Not 1395. I've been hitting a wall when it comes to expansion. I started the game on default, but felt like buyers were taking too much attention to play with the mechanics of the game. Yep. So I switched to a rail world and launched my first rocket. Basically no expansion, making the rocket as slow as possible, still playing to rail worlds, but stuck around the same game every time. When I get to the points of producing 6 to 10 assemblers of purple and yellow science, I have to expand a lot. Yes, you do. And build huge sections dedicated to circuits. Yes, you do. I'm looking for tips or advice on how to set that up. Do I put furnaces near the mines and move the plates? Move all the ore at once, smelting location, travel out from there. Do I put circuits in their own place, transport? Yeah. Getting from zero to blue science, the chemical science, through red, green, military, and chemical. You can kind of do that on a base set of starting resources in a reasonable amount of time. Once you get up into purple and robots and all of that, it starts really, your demand of your material starts really ramping up, and that's when you either need to have made cranked up the resources on your map gen, or if you're in Rail World, you need to get good at trains, because you're going to have to start bringing a lot of stuff in. The farther you go out, away from the spawn, the more rich and bigger and deeper the deposits go. So you got to get good at trains, and so you don't have an idea of how to set the trains up. Big trains, big ratio compliant trains, and lots of rail, lots of stacker, and lots of mining. Mine into a chest, load that chest into a into a rail car at a stop, and then start sending them back and have a depot there, a supply depot and a demand depot. But you're right on track in hitting. Right when you hit purple and yellow science, it's you gotta ramp up. The demand for red circuits really increases a lot, and red circuits take lots of green circuits, and then once you need blue circuits for yellow science, and yellow takes a ton of green and a ton of red, and you're right. More oil, more everything, man. You're in the right. All those work, but if you because you've started out on a rail world, I would get trains going, and I would take that opportunity also to begin to move smelting off site, such that you are mining you're mining into a smelting line, and then putting the plate into a train rather than the ore into a train, and moving plate back to your main base. That's not a super hard jump to make when you're starting out. When you're starting to go that way. The crazier mega bases will start tearing down and trucking in or training in green circuits or red circuits, or plastics or something like that. Or they'll crazy part is when you start training in modules or training in blue circuits. That's the advanced stuff. But go ahead and don't be afraid to leap to, especially copper. Leap to trucking copper plate in. That's a good one too, because there's no other use for copper plate or copper ore other than making copper plate. The gotcha with iron ore is you can use iron ore for concrete, which is you're going to need that probably at main base for rocket stuff, or at least initially you will. So don't rip up all your iron ore. Save some of it for concrete, because otherwise you're going to have a bad time, and you have to concrete, or you have to train in iron ore and iron plate separately. But start with copper. Redditor BE says, when is the next update coming out? I started a new map, but now it's crashing constantly to a bug fixed for the next version. What? Oh, he's got mods. That's what it is. I can't remove the mod because it's essential. Yeah. September for the 1.0 release. Haha. Yeah, Redditor, don't roll back. Roll back. 1821 is fine. Roll back. I'm sure it's been thought about before, says Tom R. Lutong. But why are there no two-way inserters? Must be a good reason. They make things so much tidier. Well, a two-way inserter? Is it bi-directional, that it can either move material this way or move material that way? Or is it my inserter will put it into I have one inserter, and in case number 1 I'm going to put it in this box, in case number 2 I'm going to put it in this box, and it can filter out left and right? I'm sure there's probably a mod out there to try it, but main game, it's kind of that based on a set of tools solve this problem, and I feel like they've given us a good set of tools to solve whatever problem that Factorio throws at us, more than a two-way inserter, if that's the way I took that. It might mean that they do input and output, like based on a condition, I can either send material from A to B, or I can bring material from B to A based on a condition. You can design that in using two inserters and use circuits for it. You could move material that way, but weird. Yeah, two-way inserters are probably something someone could mod. I don't see it coming in base game. Midas is King says, how do you set up your defensive outpost resupply stations? Do you name all the stations and have trains head there? When the station is activated, come back for restock. That's a great way to do it. Or do you name all the outposts unique names and have the resupply trains run on a circuit? I started by using the same name, but realized now it means some outposts won't get visited for a while. Yes. And there are closer outposts that need supplies first. Yes. I could probably fix this with more resupply trains. Bigger resupply trains. Okay, so in the same thing, in the same line as we talked about in one of the first questions, fuel. In a fuel depot is one station named fuel supply and 30 stations named fuel demand, right? And then that station is activated or deactivated based on a signal, a circuit that checks inventory. So in my case, it was fuel. In his case, it'll be walls or something. Hey, I have an outpost with a bunch of bots, and they have repair packs and walls. And as the biters come invade, you lose some lasers, you lose some walls, you lose some repair packs, and you lose some bots. And if any one of those drops below a certain amount of inventory, you trigger this station name to come on, and then the supply train sees it and races out there and drops off all the supplies and then runs back and fills up again. That's ideal. That's big brain, right? That's how I would probably do it. But it does mean that if you have 30 stations named fuel demand or defense demand, and 6 of them pop up all at the same time because they got attacked at the same time, the 6th one might be waiting a little bit to get its supplies back. So either one, increase how early you see the signal so it has time before it dies. 2, bigger inventory so that when you bring a bigger train and bigger inventory, so bring the train out and dump a lot of wall out there and then trigger early so it has time to do it. That's probably how I would handle it. 3, make it a fast train. Rocket fuel or uranium fuel. Get it out there as quick as possible. And yeah, I agree with that one. That's another good use case for the one to many, the one supply to many supply outposts of the same thing. You can also use, for your supply trains like that, you can use the I guess on mine it's the middle mouse button. It may not be on yours, but it's to declare each box in the train of what it can bring out there. You can really get a nice control on your inventory. But don't be afraid to make a really big train that takes a bunch of stuff out there all at once. That's how I'd do it. So Midas is King. You're on the right track. I would do your first suggestion. The original Jake. I'm starting to get into solar a bit now. Good. I tried to come up with my own build. Saw in blueprints that they include accumulators in the solar build. Is this the only aesthetic? No. Is there a reason why I can't have a field of accumulators somewhere else? There's not a reason. That is just fine to do it that way. The reason why we capture it in a single blueprint is so that the ratios are consistent no matter where you do. That way you have one blueprint instead of 2. That way, anytime you put down a solar, or some solar panels, it puts down the appropriate number of accumulators in with the blueprint. That's why. The ratio is, if I remember, it's 25 to 21, or somewhere close to that. I would 25 panels to 21 accumulators. I would err on the side of more accumulators than solar panels because of lasers. I would I would rather put down 2 or 3 or 4 solar layouts and have a few more accumulators than try and tune that a little bit tighter. So my layouts are more 25 to 25. They're much more tighter controlled. I have more accumulators, or I think however many I put down. I plop it down, and it's about 200. In the big blueprint that I do, it's 200 and 200, something like that. I have about a 1-to-1 ratio, so that there's more accumulators than solar panels. And if I get close on power, I just plop down several more. That ratio is important to where if you visualize the solar as it goes through its daytime, it's a sine wave. So the solar starts out in the morning or at night with 0 power, and as the sun rises, which you don't ever see the sun in Factorio, as the sun rises, the peak goes up, and there's this ramp up time, and it peaks out for X part of the day at 60 kilowatts, and then as the sun sets, it goes down, and there's a curve all the way down to 0, and it stays at 0 for some time, and then goes back up. If you average all that out, it is an average of 42 kilowatts the whole day. So what you need to do is that ratio is of 25 to 21 solar panels to accumulators is the number of accumulators you need when the solar panel goes down to nothing and is in darkness mode. The accumulators can put out enough power to sustain your base and give you that 42 kilowatts each until the solar panel comes back up and kicks on again and is able to generate all the power. So that's that ratio. That's why the blueprint arrangement is such that it is. But the way that you've done it is there a reason why I can't have just a field of accumulators? No, there's absolutely no reason. Do it. You can have all your solar panels over here and all your accumulators over here. It's fine. But having them in one blueprint helps you stay ratio compliant and helps you know that no matter what you put down, whenever you put it down, you're in the same ratio and you're going to have enough to make it through the night. 42 kilowatts, 42. Life, the universe, and everything. Biff Blish asks, I'm mainly asking the devs this. How did y'all choose the numbers in the game? How did you decide how much power all the buildings use? How did you decide how much liquid recipes use? Where did you come up with these numbers for the game? Was it just a bunch of trial and error? Yep, let's do it. 10. I feel like a 10. Post that on the forums. They probably don't frequent Reddit too much. They may or may not be aware that Reddit exists. They take the game seriously in that they probably started with some base values and then balanced everything off of that. If I were designing a game, I would probably take the level 1 assemblers, inserters, belts, etc., and get all the values from that, and then I would build on top of that ratios that where if I added X amount of crafting, I'm going to need this amount of power and add this amount of pollution to add on to that in exchange for this level of recipe complexity and this amount of extra crafting speed. That's probably how they did it, is they probably start off with a base level at level 1 and then built on that. The Puddle Stomper says, what are city block bases and what's the logic and reasoning behind them? I've seen them mentioned recently and haven't been able to figure them out. This is something that would be great to ask my buddy Nilos about because he is Mr. City Block. Also, following that same line is my buddy Hafala's. He does, I think he calls them train districts. And he builds, so whereas Nilos will, what I've seen most of the Nilos do is make concrete paths so you can walk everywhere. and walk from city block to city block. Hafala's does train districts, so he can ride trains from district to district, is what I've seen. I'm sure they've done both of those. That's what I've seen most from both of them. But a city block is just kind of a way of organizing your logistics and your inventory to say city block A produces iron. And so all the stuff that I do is going to be centered around iron plate. It's going to have the iron trains here. It's going to have a bunch of iron delivery or iron smelting, and that's all it's going to do. It's a way of organizing your say, an iron build. What it allows then is, as in the question I had earlier, that came in that said, or the question we read earlier, which is, how do I scale up my builds? Well, the beauty of what city blocks is now you basically have your blueprint of how to do it, right? So if I build one city block of iron, now all I got to do is go copy, paste, 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 and I've got 4 city blocks. And now I've multiplied my output by 4, assuming I could just throw more trains on the network, or throw more bots in the network, and run some belts through over to here, and I have an input and an output, and now it allows you to scale up. It's a nice little way to organize your inventory. It's also a nice way to it's a nice way to modularize your base such that you can look at your overall demand and say, I need more green circuits. Therefore, I'm going to go copy, paste, paste, paste. Well, now I have 4 green circuit blocks. Well, that just increased my copper demand by now I need double the copper demand. So now I need a copper district. Paste, paste, paste. And now I need to go find copper mining at another place. Paste, paste, paste. You can do it, right? The size of the city block varies. Sometimes it is done by chunk. Sometimes it is done by length of power pole. Sometimes it's done by... Okay, that looks good. It depends. You can define a city block however you want. I've seen it done many different ways. I want to say Hafala's did X number of... The one that I played in with Hafala's was a Bobs and Angels run, and I think he did it by X number of power poles. So he could copy and paste the power network together. It all had signals. It was also big enough to accommodate train length so that you didn't have a train that was half in and half out, right? Right. What you don't want to do is have a train trying to enter a city block, but having its tail stuck out stuck out in the intersection, blocking other trains. Right. So you want to, but you don't want it too big, because now the material, you're taking up so much of your map just by one thing. You have a bunch of wasted dead space. So there's multiple ways to define what a city block is. Far falleth fa tail. Hi. I think I don't understand fluid transportation. Nobody does. What's the magic to avoid fluid jams? Pumps. What pumps are needed besides what are pumps needed for besides filling and emptying trains? The one thing that is missing in Factorio base game that I would have liked to have seen is something like one-way valves. Right now, the only way to get a one-way valve is a pump. Because if I just have tank 1 and tank 2, and I put a pipe in between them, the fluid is going to slosh between those two based on the volume and pressure in each one, which those calculations are crazy math. And pumps are really the only way to get a to get a one-way valve, and it takes power, and it takes UPS, and it takes some stuff, right? So, in answer to your question, pumps are useful for one-way pipe or for one-way valves. Number two, there is a value in pumping long distances that is friction. And you lose pump fluid flow over long distances because of this friction value. There's like a viscosity and friction value. Don't ask about the calculations and how it works, but it is essentially every like 16 undergrounds or so, you got to have another pump to keep pushing it. And then the other value for pumps other than the trains is control of inventory. The way that you do this is you plop down a tank, put a pump on it, and then put a wire from the pump to the tank, and says only pump out of here if it's above X number of level or something, and that way it keeps your level at the same rate. Same way. I use that for the cracking operation, so that as my 3 oil derivatives come out of there, I have petroleum, heavy, and light. And number one, I want all of the heavy to go to lube if possible, and then if not, I'm going to crack it down to heavy, or crack it down to light. So then I'm going to set up 2 pumps, one that goes to lube that's always running, and a second pump that's going to cracking. But then I'm going to set up a condition on that pump to say if it gets over 20K in a 25K tank capacity, 20 out of 25 or so, if it gets up too high, then pump out here and crack the excess. And then that gets cracked to light. And then I have a similar thing. All of my light oil is going to go to solid fuel first. And then what I don't use for solid fuel, I use a pump to crack. I have a condition, 20K or so. Push all that to petroleum gas. And then everything petroleum gas, all of it gets used to plastic. Just build all plastic, all sulfuric. All that. Just go. That's an example, right, of what you use pumps for. The fluid dynamics and the fluid flow, crazy high-level math. Let the Factorio devs do that. That's what you pay them for. But that's the short answer. Hit the wiki. You can do some more research if you want to nerd out on pump fluid dynamics. There's some fuzzy logic and math and all that there. Fluid dynamics has been something they are going to work on right up until they ship, and maybe even afterwards. Schrodinger's hat says it's a hat that's theirs. It's not. Loading got a whole lot slower for me, like 5 to 10 times slower sometime in the UI update. Is this a known issue? Depends. What does that mean? Slower. I don't think it's gotten slower for me, but then again, I've been doing mods recently, so if you're using mods always take a longer time to load than vanilla. But I cannot confirm that the vanilla loading time is different than 17 to 18. I have not noticed the same. Cannot repeat this issue. OC Baker, who is a moderator. What's up with everyone posting this damn tweet? It's been removed 10 times now. Is it nudity? Yeah. I want to believe that somehow Rule 1 was clear. We get less of them, but I think I'm dreaming. I want to make one real clear anyway. What tweet? Never spends doing 6 hours doing something by hand when you get 6 hours failing to automate it. I think I saw that. Yeah. So upvote this guy for finding all of the examples and basically throwing it in this moderator's face. That's the Streisand effect. Right there. That's the Streisand effect, is Barbara Streisand goes to such lengths to make sure that no one knows where her house is, that now everybody wants to know where her house is. And everybody scours the world trying to figure it out. So he says, don't quit posting this tweet. And everybody says, oh, cool. Do you mean there's a tweet we can post? Diablo 2 says, not a question. All right, skip. Poop is the shit. A UPS question if someone has the answer to it. What are the UPS costs of trains and railways? Yay! Anything one should do with a rail layout to help with the Pathfinder faster. Is there a difference cost between 1.4 and 2.4 trains? And if yes, big difference. In general, before I tell you what I'm going to tell you, in general, trains are way better than they used to be. If you're on the latest version, trains got super good, super lower, much lower UPS since they went to version 17. For trains, bigger trains are the principle of what uses UPS more than anything, more than other things. Train pathfinding and I guess that's tied to the train stops. Train pathfinding, and apparently there's a difference in UPS/FPS with the train pathfinding, which I think that may have been fixed now. So, for example, in pathfinding, I'll tell you about train pathing here in a minute because that's the bigger one to address. But train pathing, an up and down train or a left and right train is less UPS noisy than a diagonal train. And I think that is similar to the biter corrective fix they did in 2 FFFs ago, as of this recording, where they showed a biter going up a diagonal path, and it went like this, right? It went and zigzagged, right? That's more UPS noisy because the train is doing something similar. Well, now the correction that they just made is that now it's much more smoother, and the biter does this little travel thing, right? Yeah, so I think that's what they fixed. So what I'm telling you about diagonals being worse, it may no longer apply. It may be a side effect of them fixing the biter pathing and fixing those hitbox things and that pathing on biters, which might have now fixed it for trains as well. And the difference between a diagonal pathing and a vertical/horizontal pathing may now be negligible because of that fix. Can't confirm or deny. That's one aspect. So straight up and down is better. I still use diagonal because it usually doesn't get there. I'm just going to trust that it's fixed. The other thing is train pathing. When a train goes from A to B and it tries to find a path, there is UPS that is generated to go, how can the train best find its way from A to B? Now, what used to happen is that the train, when I said A to B, go train, the train would in the background do a calculation of every possible rail path. So every loop within a loop, every single path on its way there would be calculated and attempt to go get there, to go get past. So if there was a way that it could go straight there, if there's a way to go down around this curve, it would check that. It would check every possible path. That has since been very much optimized to where it's not going to go through all of those paths and do calculations. It's way better than it used to be. But that being said, if you want to defend against this sort of UPS drain, there is a UPS drain for trying to find pathing. So, as an example, bigger trains are better because you're moving, say, if I have 4 cargo wagons versus 8 cargo wagons, for the cost of in the 4 cargo wagons to move X amount of material, I'm going to have to do 2 train paths, which cost 2 batches of UPS. If I move one train, and one giant train, I'm only going to do 1 UPS worth of calculations, which is why in most of my bases, you'll see me start off with 8 cargo wagons for every train. I go big early, and that means I got to spread out, and that means I got to make some big train decisions early on. I got to expand out pretty big, but what it does is it sets me up for later on that I can mega base a lot easier because I've put in the big trains early on, so that we can save UPS for later on. All right, because at the end game for Factorio, UPS is the end boss. You will out-tech biters. You will eventually find every piece of material that you're looking for. You essentially you're fighting against your own computer as the end boss. That's what will stop you at Factorio. If you go past a rocket, you launch a rocket, you're done. But if you keep going, you'll eventually hit a point at which your base will no longer be able to operate because of UPS. Also, intersections tend to affect that train pathing. So if you have fewer paths through an intersection or shoot fewer intersections, it's better. Anyway, think about it in terms of every time a train attempts to do a path, it consumes UPS, and every time a train is stopped and does a path, it consumes UPS. So straight up and down, straight left and right is good for pathing, fewer diagonals, and then fewer larger trains is better. Try not to do loops. That's why I do double-sided trains, so that a train pulls in and pulls right back out, so there's no loop. And that cuts down on the amount of rail calculations that it has to do before it gets there. Like I said, but that's been improved quite a bit since version 16. Benny Olive says, can I selectively load a train with just one item? Here's a scenario. Let's say there are 3 chests at one train stop. We have gears, copper, and pipe. When a train arrives at a stop, I only want to load the gears. Yes. You can go into the wagon itself and filter out the wagon slots. I think mine is middle mouse button. I click on it and I can set it whatever I want in that bucket. You have to filter all of them out so that I can only grab I can only fill it with that sort of that material. The other one is you can put some conditions on the inserter, maybe, so that the inserter doesn't exercise until a certain condition is met. You can use some circuits on it, so that depending on what other conditions are there and what you want to use it for, that it's only going to fill this wagon with X amount, or with whatever it is. But you got to be careful, because if it's different material, you need to watch your stack size. You need to override your stack size and do ones instead of big stacks, because what will happen is if you're filling it with element number 1, it may have something left over in its item, and try and fill it in there next time, and you'll get a little bit of bleed over in your materials. Both of those can work. Otherwise, I usually design out of this and just use dedicated things for dedicated stops. But if this is something like a supply train, then set your stack sizes to minimum, or just filter your train wagon items. I think I have stacks. All my stacks are set to max size, and I just filter the wagons. What zoom quest settings do you use for reasonable size screenshots? I don't know. I don't think I usually take a screenshot of my base. There's a mod that allows you to take gigantic, awesome screenshots out there. I think it's called Screenshot. Do a search in the forums and look in the mod section, or look for the mods, and look for screenshot mod or something. Jibe says, has Woob talked about introducing major changes in future updates? No. Upcoming features, all they're really doing is finalizing everything. Improve the blueprint library, GUI screens, entity main screens, sound, which they're doing. They're doing assembly machine redesign. The beacon redesign is going. New player experience is canceled. Sound design, final game balancing. I would say very little is going to come out of here. Finalize locale and proofreading. They haven't done much of anything. That's a good summary, absolute idiom of the roadmap. But I would expect very, very little balancing in any no new buildings, no new entities, no new recipes. Very, very little. But just the look and feel of everything in graphics, right? Beacons we saw the other week. That's coming. Anyway, there you go. Sam HTH says, new player here, just started working with oil. Oh, God. Poor bastard. I'm seeing very low volume of flow of processed oil. Is that normal? I mean, like 10 refineries to be able to keep up with plastic sulfur supply. What's the purpose of pumps? Do I need pumps in my oil long distances? Yes, you do. Yeah, we just talked about that. We'll leave that there. Use of pumps is pretty good. Make some tanks, pump out of them. Put a pump on the output of the tank. Yeah, and it's different if you're using non-fluids. If you're using belts, assemblers, and assembly machines, you can look at it, and most of the time between those three things happening, you can figure out where your bottlenecks are. Fluids are a little more complex because you have to actually kind of look in the pipe, see whether a pipe's full or not. You also have to look at pressure and how much it's running. You can look at the entities. You can usually tell when a refinery is on or a chemical plant is on. But otherwise, it's a little harder to do. Most likely what you're going to run into is with advanced oil, you're going to try and balance the three derivatives, petroleum, light, and heavy. And one of them is going to fill up faster than the other one, probably light oil. And then everything's going to stop, and you're going to go, "What's And that's the secret. Once you can figure that out, you'll be able to very effectively work with oil. Yeah. Keep at it, Sam HTH. Oil is a big hurdle. It's a big hurdle. Plain Passion says, bought the game, loving it until it gets very technical with the circuit network tech. I mean, how to program such things? I can't even make them work. Is there a beginner's tutorial, at least starting point, on how to use red and green wires, the combinator switches? Maybe this game is too technical for me. No, you can launch a rocket, you can complete the game, you can do mega bases without ever using a circuit. We've done that before. Circuits are there if you want to really tighten stuff up. I've pretty much built mega bases without using any combinators. Check out some. I think Shred Guy posted one that probably still applies called Combinator Classroom. Look up just YouTube tutorial how to use combinators. I'm not very good at them. I have a couple of rudimentary circuits that I use for very specific things, but otherwise I don't have to. I usually just do a Kanban system, and I make inventory is my signal, such that I want to limit the inventory of the output of resource A. I'll just block the chest up and say you're only going to get one stack out. Right? I'm not going to do any circuits to control that stack size or control the amount. Very few. I'll wire up a few things, but I don't think any of my normal routine builds use combinators. I use one or two in a speed run to count a few things, but even then I borrowed that from somebody else. I think don't freak if you can't use circuits. It's not for everybody, and you can make a pretty nice Factorio career off of never using circuits. There are other people, like my buddy Rain9441, who these arrived in his hands, and he instantly knew how to do it, and he instantly knew how to operate them, and he instantly just circuited his whole base because he's used to if-then loops, he's used to conditions, he's used to all of these type of operations. It was like a musician who knows how to play piano picks up a saxophone and it immediately makes sense to him, and then he can just play the saxophone without having much lessons at all. That happens. Or a an athlete who is really good at say football suddenly starts to do baseball, and everything, just the mechanics make sense to him, and he can just play. He can just play either sport, and he's pretty good at both of them because he's just athletic. I have a feeling that the nature at which you can pick up circuits is also kind of a translatable mindset, or maybe a skill set that translates whether you write code in text or whether you write code in this circuit network. It's kind of just a similar medium. But don't sweat it. All right, that was This Week in Reddit. Thank you very much for watching this video. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you like this sort of thing. Leave a question or any comments down in the comment section below. All the links that we talked about are in the description, so make sure you hit those up. If you would do me a favor, you can come out and see this. We can talk about this live. Twitch.tv/Clowntown. Shoot me a follow. And make sure you also ring that bell on Twitch as well, so you can see when I go live. We record this every Friday night. As we go through that, we do a little bit of a new player night. Thank you very, very much for being here, and we'll see you next time.